What is going on, guys? Welcome back. It's been a few days since we were last in Hogwarts Park, and I thought it was about time I brought you the next episode in this series. Now, a few days ago we did return to Hogwarts Park after quite a little bit of a break, and I was working towards getting Privet Drive done. In the previous episode we did rework the old Harry Potter's house from Privet Drive, and we got a new kind of updated look to the building, because when I originally built that building, of course, there wasn't as many pieces in the game. The correct kind of brickwork and all that kind of stuff wasn't actually in the game at the time. So if you haven't seen the previous episode where we kind of redid the whole building, definitely go check that out. That will be linked in the description, and you guys can go check that out before this video. But yeah, this is the follow-up video to the last one in the series, and this is the one where we get the Privet Drive pretty much completely done. I would say after the end of this video we're about 95% done, and yeah, in the next one we'll probably just finish it off, a few little more details at the beginning of next episode, and then we'll move on to something else which I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I'm sure you guys will give me some suggestions in the comment section. So if you guys got any ideas of what I should build next in Hogwarts Park, do let me know down below, because I do listen to your guys' suggestions, and I'll probably start working on one of them projects in the next episode of Hogwarts Park. So as you can see, I have saved the original building, and I have copied and pasted 5 of them in to the left side of this kind of road that we've got going on down here now. So like I mentioned in the last episode, I was just going to be copy and pasting the main building, because in the actual Privet Drive where they filmed the first movie, it was in an actual street in the UK, I believe, and all the houses were pretty much the same. The only differences between them were kind of like the colour of the brick, and a few of the things out the front and the back of the houses. So I did want to keep the main shape of the building pretty much identical on each one. As you can see, I am just going through these and changing up a few of the things to make them fit into the street, changing up the colours of the brickwork and the doors, and you know, little tiny things that distinguish the buildings from each other, because I do want to make it obvious that one of them is the actual Harry Potter's house. So Harry's actual house has the signpost out the front, the one that says Privet Drive on it. I do still need to actually get the wording onto it. I'm not really too sure how I'm going to do that. I'll have to find something quite small that I can colour black and then try and write Privet Drive on it. If I can't do it, I'll just leave it blank, but we already have the sign made, so that's not a problem. It's just trying to get the wording onto there. That's going to be a little bit of an issue, but I'm sure I'll come up with something to try and get that on there. And if I can't work out, I'm sure one of you guys in the comments will let me know a decent way to get that done. So yeah, as you can see, 5 of these buildings now in. Of course, we still have the other side of the street to go, but it's looking good. 5 of these buildings in. I did want to keep it to 5 buildings per side of the road. I think the original road that they filmed the first movie in had about 6 or 7, but the end couple of houses weren't the same style as the rest of them, and you didn't really see too much of them in the movie anyway. And then when they moved to the set for the next couple of movies that this was actually featured in, they actually had a set that only had, I think, 4 or 5 on either side. So it's kind of like a mix and match between the physical housing from the first movie and the sets from the later movies. So I'm kind of like picking and choosing different features from different movies, because I can't get everything in. Otherwise I'd end up building like 5 different streets to get everything completely accurate. But yeah, so those 5 buildings were in, and now it was time to kind of work on the road out the front. This actually gets changed a little bit later in the video, as you guys will see. But at this point, this was what I was going for. Originally, I had the driveways connecting straight up to the road, but that wasn't too accurate, because at least in the UK, there's normally a pathway either side of the main road. So that was what I went for here. As you can see, I've now put a little pathway or walkway either side of the main road, and I'm putting kind of like a curb system in to kind of distinguish the path from the actual driveways. So I have a tall curb in between, and then when it gets to the drive, I drop it down so people can drive over it. Obviously, they're not going to want to drive over a massive curb, so that's why we did that. And I followed that low piece of curb down to the actual road as well. So if this was an actual road, people would be able to drive up to the drives. They're not going to break their tires or burst their tires or whatever trying to get over these curbs. So I did drop them down specifically for that. So it looks okay. It looks good. It actually looks more like a road now. But the actual roadway does get deleted a little bit later. But that will become a little bit obvious why I do that in a bit. But for now, I'm not going to tell you why we do that until that part of the video comes up. So now that all those curbs are pretty much in place, in the places where I wanted them to be, we did start to work on the exterior to the houses around the back end. So the gardens and getting that all kind of tied into the rest of the park. Now I could have just left these open, but I had an idea in mind of something I wanted to add to this a bit later on. So that's why I went through and added these trees so that people can't actually see from the back of the garden out into kind of like the open space where people can't actually get to. So I kind of wanted to close this off a little bit with trees so people couldn't see through there. That will once again become a little bit obvious a little bit later on why I did that. But yeah, those trees look really good out the back. It kind of closes everything off. So even if you're in like a different section of the park, you're not really going to see too much unless you actually venture over to this section. So that was kind of nice. It worked out okay. And I just like the way that it looks in the end. So at this point, I moved on to the terrain tool, and I just grabbed the little bit of a leaf tool and put some leaves out the front. In the original design to these houses, I'd actually put the foliage bush into the ground to make kind of like grass, because back in the day when I first built this building, there wasn't really any sprays to spray anything onto the ground. So the best thing I could do back then was to just put loads of bushes sunk into the ground to kind of make a more grassy texture. But we don't need that anymore. That just adds extra lag into the game that was unnecessary. So I did decide to actually just get rid of that and use those sprays instead. And it looks a lot better as well, and less lag, which I'm always happy for. So at this point, I also decided to change up the chimney tops. The chimneys that I had originally didn't look that great, and they weren't representative of what the chimneys looked like on the actual building in real life. So I did go back in, get rid of them, and I just put in these square brick, which matches the rest of the building as well, which is really nice. And I put these little black pieces on top to kind of, you know, top off the top of the chimneys. And make it look a little bit more natural than it did previously. So I was happy with the way that that turned out. And later on, we do go back in and finish all the rest of the chimneys. But I was kind of testing that out at this point, so I didn't know whether I was going to keep it. But I did decide a little bit later on that that is definitely what I wanted to stick with. And we did go back and add them to all of the rest of the buildings. So at this point, the left-hand side of the main street here is complete. So we're now moving on to the other side. Now, what I didn't expect to happen here, obviously this road isn't straight. So there's a curve on this road as well. What I wasn't expecting was because obviously if you have a curve on one side, it's going to be longer on one side than it is on the other side. So actually putting these houses in on this side of the road, because it bends inwards, it was actually making it more cramped to fit the 5 houses in. And that's a little bit obvious that that was going to happen, but I didn't think about it at the time. So when I started putting these in, I struggled a little bit, and I had to get rid of a lot of the stuff out the back of the houses to get everything to fit in without, you know, overlapping and pieces of buildings clipping into each other and all that sort of nasty stuff that you don't really want to be having going on when you're building something. So yeah, I did have to make a few little changes. I actually changed the design of the street a little bit, whereas before I was going to have the driveways completely opposite each other. I actually moved them so it was kind of like a gap between. So where there's the grass on the house opposite, that's where the driveway is on the house on this side. So it actually looks a lot better, and it looks a little bit more realistic. It's not very often you have opposite houses with their driveways completely opposite. They are usually kind of like zigzagged down the road. So it did make more sense to do it this way, and I'm happy I spent the time changing it, because it definitely looks a lot better like this than the way I was originally going to do it. So I'm kind of glad that there was a little bit of a, oh no, this isn't going to work moment, and I had to kind of rethink what I was doing for a little bit. And it worked out quite nicely. I'm really happy that it worked out like this. So yeah, as you can see, now we have 5 buildings on either side of the road. So Privet Drive is finally coming together. Of course, I did have to go back in again like I did on the other side, change the colors of all the brickwork, because even though they look the same, you do not really want them to all be the same colors, because then that does get a little bit too boring and a little bit dull. So I did go in and I changed a lot of the colors of the brickwork once again, and fixed up the outsides of these buildings, because as you can see at the moment there is a lot of overlapping that's going on out the back, but just because of the way that the buildings fit together back there. So it was a little bit of a nightmare trying to get everything to fit perfectly, so nothing was kind of clipping into each other. But once it was done, I was really happy with it, and it worked out really nicely. As you can see now, the back of these buildings all line up perfectly. They all have about the same space in their back gardens. There's a few with a little bit less, and the one on the end has a little bit more, but that's normal. If you live on an end house, you usually have a little bit of a bigger garden than everyone else in the street. So it worked out okay. I'm happy with the way that it worked out. So just recoloring these buildings now, like I said previously, getting them so they're all kind of in the spectrum of the yellowish browny kind of colors. Nothing ridiculous, no blues or greens or anything stupid like that. They're all very close to each other color wise, but there's enough difference between them to make it look a little bit more realistic. I didn't want them all to look the same, and I did definitely want Harry's house to stand out. So yeah, going in, just changing the colors of everything really worked out quite nicely. And it didn't actually take as long as I first expected it to as well. So that was a nice bonus. So at this point in the recording, I was kind of expecting everything to be nearly finished. All the buildings were color changed, everything was working out exactly how I wanted it to, and I was nearly done. But then I was thinking, how am I going to get the guests to actually come down this part of the park and be able to see this? So one way I thought I could do this was to actually implement one of the rides into this area. And one of the rides which would work really well would be this one. Unfortunately, the look of the car on this ride isn't perfect, and it's not what I would have wanted. More of a modern car would have been really nice, but unfortunately it is kind of like an olden day car in this ride. But it gets cars to go down the road, and guests can now take a little ride or a guided tour through Privet Drive, which is really nice. So this is what we're doing right now, just getting this roadway in. So I have actually deleted, as you can see, the actual roadway down Privet Drive, and we're putting this little road in, which I will go back and edit in just a second, so it's a little bit more straight, a little bit more tidy, but I was just getting this in originally here to see how this would kind of work, because I wasn't too sure whether this would work at all at the beginning. So it was kind of a little bit of a test. I made sure I saved the map before I did this, because I was going to be deleting and moving quite a few pieces that I did want to be able to put back in place if this didn't work out. So I did make sure that I saved this, because like I said, I wasn't too sure whether this would work out, but it did work out, and it worked out a lot better than I first expected it to. The only problem at this point, which I still haven't worked out yet, is how to get the entrance, the queue line and the exit and stuff actually into this ride. Like, what part of the park am I going to connect this to? That's the main problem I'm facing right now with this, but as you can see, it's functioning. We have a road going in and a road going out of the road in Privet Drive, so people can now come get on this ride and take a guided tour on this little, I don't know what you would call this, it's not a coaster, more like a track ride. But yeah, because we deleted that road down the middle, it looked a little bit strange with the grass showing through, so I did go back in there with this spray can and just paint that little section black. As you can see down the end, we have like a little roundabout section. So once the whole of the track was in place, I did go back, just add a few more little trees to kind of close this area off. Like I said, I don't really know how I'm going to connect this to the rest of the park. We got to think of something. I'm sure I'll come up with something where people can cut through from the main street or something along them lines, but there's got to be a way to connect this up. And yeah, if you guys have any ideas of how to do that, because I'm kind of stumped at the moment for an idea for that, but I'm sure we'll come up with something and make it work out. But yeah, at this point the track was in, I was really happy with the way that it goes. As you can see, it first takes a little tour around the backside of the houses where Harry's house is, and then it comes down the actual road, and then it goes through a little roundabout section, goes back up the road, and then comes back round the other side of the road through the other gardens of the other houses. So it's kind of a boring tour, I guess, if you're not into Harry Potter at all. Maybe riding this ride isn't something that you would like to do in real life, but it gives people a way to get down here, and that's what I really wanted to kind of do. And we of course do have the actual pathways on either side of the road, so maybe there's a way I can connect them up, some way to get guests to actually walk up and down there. So that's a real possibility as well. I'm sure there's some way of connecting them up and getting people to actually walk down the path. So when you're actually riding this, there's actual guests walking up and down. That would be really cool. Whether that's possible or not, I'm not really too sure yet, but I'm sure we can come up with something where we can get people there. So yeah, it's looking really good. I'm really happy with the way Privet Drive has turned out so far. It's not complete 100% yet. Like I said, at this point, I would say we're probably about 94, maybe 95% done. There's a few more little things. We obviously have to get the queue line in for the ride that is now here. Try and get those pathways connected up, and a few more little details along the way to get done. But of course, Privet Drive wouldn't be complete without the lights, as you would have seen in the first Harry Potter movie if you've watched it. When Hagrid comes down on his little motorcycle, or whatever that thing's called with the side carriage, the lights do get turned on by, I think, is it Dumbledore that turns the lights on? I think so. Dumbledore turns the lights on, then Hagrid comes down in his motorcycle, I think. So I did get a few little triggers in there to turn on the street lamps as you're going through this ride. And around the backside where Harry's house is, of course, you want to be able to see which one's Harry's house. So we do get a nice little illumination back there on the backside of Harry's house. So when you're going through there, you do get that to light up as well, so you know exactly which one's Harry's house. And then once that was done, I of course wanted to come back in and put the bars on Harry's window, because everyone in my live stream, last time I live streamed this, was asking for the bars, because I think in the second or the third movie he's in this bedroom round the back and it's all barred up. So there we go, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I'm going to show you a little bit of slowed down footage now of this as it's complete so far. And then, like I said, in the next episode, we'll get this finished and then move on to the next project. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, remember to drop a like. If we get 50 likes on this video, I'll get the next one out a lot quicker for you guys. And yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed for more content in Planet Coaster and other games. And also join the Discord. The link to the Discord chat is in the description of the video. Come join the awesome community over there that we're building. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.